At first glance, you might think the US and the UK are pretty similar democracies, but the way they choose their leaders? Whoa, they're on completely different planets. So today, we're going to break down those two wildly different paths to power. So, how is it possible that one leadership race is this grueling 2-year, billion-dollar marathon, while the other can literally be a sudden, weeks-long sprint? Let's get into the political machinery behind these huge differences. Well, the answer really lies in their political DNA. The US is a presidential republic, which means powers are separated. The UK, on the other hand, is a parliamentary monarchy, where the executive and legislative branches are basically fused together. And that one core difference? Well, it explains almost everything that follows. Okay, first up, let's talk about the marathon, the American race for president. And trust me, it is a long, complicated, and unbelievably expensive journey. So this whole process really unfolds in 4 key stages. First, you've got to battle it out just to win your own party's nomination. Then there's the big, flashy party convention. After that comes the nationwide general election campaign. And it all ends with a very unique, and let's be honest, often controversial system for actually counting the final votes. It all kicks off with the primaries and caucuses. Honestly, you can think of these as a kind of intra-party civil war, fought out state by state. The goal here isn't to win the country just yet. It's to win over your party by collecting enough delegates to officially secure that nomination. And this timeline, wow, it just shows you how drawn out this whole thing is. It starts way back in the winter with those primaries and doesn't really truly end until the next winter. After the summer conventions officially crown the party champions, the whole country votes in November. But get this, even that isn't the final word. In the United States, this is the only number that really matters: 270. See, it's not about winning the most individual votes nationwide. Nope. It's about winning a majority in something called the Electoral College, which is made up of 538 electors awarded state by state. If you get to 270, you win. That's the game. And that system completely changes campaign strategy. Since most states pretty reliably vote for one party or the other, candidates end up pouring nearly all their time, money, and energy into just a handful of competitive swing states where the outcome could go either way. So if you don't live in one of those states, well, your issues might not get as much attention. And this leads us to the most controversial feature of the entire American system. It is absolutely possible, and believe me, it has happened, for a candidate to win those 270 electoral votes and become president, even while more people across the country voted for their opponent. Okay, now let's hop across the Atlantic to the UK, where the journey to power could not be more different. Forget the marathon we just talked about. This is a much more direct sprint to number 10 Downing Street. The UK system is built on a really simple principle. Power flows from the legislature. You don't get directly elected prime minister. Instead, you become the prime minister by being the leader of the party that commands a majority in the House of Commons. So the path then is actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, you have to win the leadership contest within your own political party. Step 2, your party has to win the most seats in a nationwide general election. And if you clear those 2 hurdles, the final step is a formal appointment by the monarch. But, and this is a really big but, that final step is pure formality. It's not a personal choice. The monarch doesn't just pick their favorite candidate. They are bound by this deep-rooted tradition, a constitutional convention, to simply appoint whichever leader has won the democratic backing of Parliament. Okay, so we've seen both paths now. Let's put them head to head. This is where the fundamental differences really start to pop. So the core difference is right here. In the US, voters are choosing electors through an indirect system to pick a president. But in the UK, they're voting directly for their local member of Parliament, their MP. And this completely changes the focus of the campaign, from trying to win a few big states to trying to win hundreds of small local races. I mean, if you wanted to put it as simply as possible, it's this. American presidential politics is a game of winning states. British politics is a game of winning seats. That single distinction explains almost everything about why their campaigns, their messaging, and their strategies are so different. But you know, this isn't just a fun piece of political trivia. The rules of the game have a huge effect on the players. They shape the kind of leaders that emerge, and importantly, how they govern once they're in power. Just think about it for a second.
A US president can easily, and often does, face a hostile Congress from the opposing party, which leads to gridlock. But a UK prime minister, by definition, is the leader of the legislative majority. These differences create entirely separate challenges for things like accountability and trying to get political reforms passed.
And that right there is really the key takeaway from all of this. The specific method a country uses to choose its leader isn't just some boring process. It fundamentally determines where politicians focus their energy, how much power an individual vote really has, and ultimately how democracy itself actually functions. So it all comes down to this big question. Which system creates a more accountable leader? The one who's tied directly to the legislature, like in the UK, or the one who's chosen separately with their own mandate, like in the US? It's a question that gets right to the very heart of how we think democracy should work.